My name is Michael Alexander. I am 17 years old. I attend Victory University. The class is English 1202. My teacher is Professor Brian Campbell. The thesis of my paper is Kindness Overcomes Diversity. When people are trying to pursue options, they have the opportunity to make positive changes. A thief with a substantial record of thievery can be reformed. I chose my favorite story, The Gold Coin. I read the story 5 times and took notes. I researched statistics on the recidivism rate of incarcerated criminals. I compiled a bibliography of credible sources. I wrote note cards and created an outline. Subsequently, after research and note-taking, I surreptitiously began the writing process. I wrote an introduction in which I discussed the topic that included a thesis statement. I presented my evidence that demonstrated that the pursuit of greed led the thief to a life of crime. I chose this topic because criminologists do not agree with the author's thesis. More than 50% of criminals have demonstrated a total lack of redemption. I engaged the reader with questions that makes the issue personal. What would happen if one stole from you? Does his ethnicity alter the reader's feelings about one? Should society accept reformed criminals? And other relevant questions. I proceeded to write an objective analysis of this short story. I demonstrated how the author avoided emotional language but made an essentially effective appeal. In the paper, I made a summary of rhetorical situations by outlining provocatively the issues presented. I enlisted background information on the author. I presented a summary of the argument's appeal. The character in the story is likable, but still intolerable. I enlisted the characteristics of the thief, the author's approach toward the character, and the emotions, thinking, and capability displayed. The ethos was demonstrated utilizing pity, sympathy, humility, and anger. The author accomplished this task by the use of poetic language, artwork, and conversation dialogue. The logos was concrete. One was a dangerous criminal with a negative lifestyle. I used transitional series of literary experiences. In each episodic stage, the story proceeds to demonstrate different aspects of the thief's experience in a logical presentation. I reviewed the story and outlined the page notes. A summary of how the argument was presented was at the last part of the analysis. My conclusion was the author's presentation of the literary text in the genre of a short story. The analysis afforded me the opportunity to expand my writing repertoire. Accordingly, the literature is similar to Harry Beecher's Stole Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is credited with starting the organized anti-slavery movement in America. It was a simple, short book that began a revolution for change. When Abraham Lincoln met Miss Stowe, he stated, "So, you are the little woman who wrote the book that made this great war." The book does not state that slavery is wrong. Instead, it produces a genre of literature that was powerful enough to produce and generate sympathy for the anti-slavery revolution through the use of ethos and logos, tools of persuasion. These are the same tools used by the author of The Gold Coin. Nevertheless, there is an abundance of literature to support the author's contention in her book, The Gold Coin, that certain criminals can be rehabilitated. Such is the argument among other authors that even hardened criminals can really reform. An encyclopedia review of literature on the personal reform accomplishments of prisoners incarcerated in the United States demonstrates unaccountable instances of redemption in the most hardened criminals. However, there is a difference here. The message is not explicit. It is hidden in pictures, words, and expression. The character is not a statistic on the chart with numerous others. Instead, he is a likable but imperfect hero. He only comes out at night, but when he is presented with opportunity, he faces daylight with a passion. In this context, the author implicitly states that the thief and other criminals lack motivation. Also, the author makes legitimate claims in the literature. Criminals, particularly thieves, are not all bad. One was a thief. He was not a violent criminal. His thievery is attributed to his lifestyle never going out in the daytime. The author wants the reader to evoke pity, sympathy, forgiveness, and respect for one's plight. She invokes these emotions by utilizing poetic language, artwork, and conversational dialogue. The claims of the author were supported through a traditional series of literary experiences. In each scenario, personal In conclusion, the author of the Gold Coin presents a literary text in the genre of a short story to demonstrate the thesis that kindly overcomes adversity. And when thieves are trying to pursue options, they have the opportunity to make positive change in their lives. Everywhere the lady went, people refused to accept her sold gold coin for services. One refused to accept it, which also evidenced that he is no longer different than any other human being. The author successfully utilizes the three tools of persuasion in this scenario to demonstrate the effectiveness of rhetoric to achieve a reader's opinion of a topic of national importance. In this particular case, the reformation and redemption of criminal behavior is obtainable with the assistance of the public.